What's going on, everybody? So today I just want to do a little mini comparison between Hyacine and Cipher. Which one is going to be worth it more so than the other one in version 3.3? Now, the simple answer for me personally is going to have to be neither of them. But before I explain why, before I explain my rationale, I have to say that both of these units are excellent, right? Hyacine is easily a tier 0 sustain unit. Cipher in her respective niche is also going to be excellent. I can't guarantee her spot in the meta, but I know that Cipher will definitely be a good character. But here's the thing about Honkai Star Rail. What matters more than just simply having meta characters is actually synergizing with your team comps. This is something that I have noticed and have recently really emphasized in my content. Even Pridewen says this, right? Pridewen says despite wherever characters may be on the tier list, this is a team building game, not just a pull from the meta unit in win game. So with that being said though, the reason why I don't think that either of these two units would be worth going for in version 3.3 is because, well, we already have an oversaturation of meta units. Instead of opting to go for these units, you can still use the already existing units. And I'll start off with Hyacine because Hyacine's the unit that more people are generally hyped for, right? I feel like Hyacine will have higher sales because she will be the best in slot sustain for Caster's team comps and general HP drain team comps because of how often she can heal, how much she can heal, right? The thing with Hyacine, and between Hyacine and Cipher, I might as well say this right now because it's a part of the video, I would pick Hyacine over Cipher for most people because Hyacine may honestly be one of, if not the best sustains in the game, right? Rivaling, Lingsha, Huohuo, Luocha, right? Even Aventurine potentially. Who knows? Maybe that's a little bit of a stretch. But here's the thing with Hyacine, right? The reason why she's not a must-pull unit is simply because there's other sustains that already exist. In my opinion, replacing a 5-star on your account, it's a big decision. I don't think it's worth, and I talked about this in plenty of videos, right? I don't think it's worth replacing a unit on your account unless that unit is no longer viable in the meta, right? So many people opted to replace Sparkle with Sunday. This in some team comps is a massive W, right? Like if you're using Aglaya, Caceres, then yes, you're going to want to use Sunday over Sparkle. But generally, like for example, with D Herda, Sparkle may honestly be a better option over Sunday. They can synergize extremely well with each other, right? But a couple examples of units that should be replaced on your account in order to be optimal in the endgame would be replacing Jinglu with the newer DPSs, right? 1.x DPSs have been power crept. We know this by now, right? Replacing Bronya with either Sparkle or Sunday. I promise you there is a much bigger difference between Bronya and Sparkle as opposed to Sparkle and Sunday, right? Bronya is a unit who has been power crept and needs to be replaced on most people's accounts. But healing units, right, specifically abundance sustains, do not need to be benched by Hyacine. None of them. None of the 5-star ones, right? Like, if you have Luocha, you absolutely do not need to replace your perfectly functional Luocha with Hyacine, even if you are using him with Caceres, which is why I would not recommend you really go for Hyacine generally, right? If all you care about is max stars in the end game, then I don't think it's worth it, really. If you are meta, right, a meta sweaty player and all you want is the 0 cycles, then it'll make sense to go for Hyacine. But generally, although I would recommend Hyacine over Cipher, I don't think that neither of these two units is going to really make a big difference. Yes, they will make a big difference, but like I said, this game really depends on team synergy and team building, which matters just as much, if not more, than actually having the characters necessary. Team building it's absolutely paramount to clearing the endgame in Honkai Star Rail. Using old characters and new characters simultaneously will be optimal in order to save as many pulls as you can for characters that you want down the line, and not wasting resources by not only benching your min-maxed older units, or at least properly built older units, but also building a newer unit as well that you simply do not need. So just keep this in mind. Hyacine will be tier 0 upon release, absolutely, but I'm just making the argument that you simply may not need her, right? Some people absolutely do. If you don't have Lingsha, Huohuo, Luocha, or any kind of healing unit, not even Fu Xuan, then Hyacine will be really worth going for. I will use myself as an example. Because I am free to play, I have Lingsha and I have Aventurine as my two primary sustains. I don't have Fu Xuan or any of the other limited 5-star sustains, and those are the only two sustain units that I will need for a long time. Lingsha is great due to how often she can cleanse, and Aventurine is great because you will never take a single hit of damage with him on your team. So just keep that in mind. Hyacine seems like she will be overkill in a lot of team comps, but let's talk about Cipher, because we're already 5.5 minutes into this video. I haven't really talked about Cipher. The thing with Cipher is that currently it doesn't seem like she will be best in slot for any kind of team comp currently. The 3.3 beta is still ongoing. These characters are still having tweaks done onto their kits. But the thing with Cipher, like I said, she doesn't seem like she will be best in slot. I don't even think that she'll be tier 0 upon release, which is why ultimately I would recommend Hyacine over Cipher. And even in the team comps where you could use Cipher in, I still feel like Hyacine really has that longevity into her kit. If you pull Hyacine, you will be using her for a long time. As long as you have her built properly and are using her in the right team comps, you don't need every single meta unit. Hyacine will absolutely help you out in terms of sustain, which once again, why I'd pick her over Cipher personally. But let's talk Cipher for the rest of this video, right? The thing with Cipher is that, like I said, the only team comps where she can function in are a couple, right? Number one, you can use her in a Fei Xiao team comp because she did get a buff to the frequency of her follow-up attacks, so she can essentially be used as a sub DPS for Fei Xiao. But the thing is, she's not going to be best in slot, right? Her follow-up attacks are probably not going to proc as much as Topaz's or Mota, Hunt March, right? Which overall, I believe that those three will be better than Cipher. And if you already have any of those three characters or have them built and you use them with Fei Xiao, you are not going to need to replace any of those three units with Cipher. Cipher will be able to debuff the enemies because keep in mind she is a Nihility, and at the end of the day, Nihilities are kind of meant to be like a reverse harmony. But Cipher's debuffing capabilities onto the enemies are really limited compared to, say, Silverwolf, Jiao Cho. She doesn't really work in that kind of sense. Cipher is a lot more emphasized when it comes to sub DPS damage. So she is kind of like a Topaz replacement for the Fart or general Fei Xiao team comps, but she's not going to be best in slot in that sense. Now, the other place where you could use Cipher is going to be a team comp with Acheron, specifically if you have her E0, right? Because then you need two Nihilities other than Acheron on the team. So, of course, you'd run Acheron. You would run Jiao Cho if you have him. Otherwise, Acheron will just not be able to really function too well, especially without her light cone. And you could use Cipher along with Jiao Cho and Acheron, but the thing is, Cipher is not going to be best in slot in that team comp either. Generally, if you really needed another Nihility along with Jiao Cho for Acheron, Pela is still an option. She's nothing crazy, but she will help you out, right? If you are, interested in the banners for 3.4, then it doesn't seem like either of these two characters at the end of the day will really make a big difference. I don't think that they're worth it, right? And I'm not saying that they're bad, right? Both Hyacine and Cipher are great units, right? Honkai Star World is a game that is constantly pumping out meta units or just generally good units, but a lot of players make the mistake of going for meta units that they don't need. Having a meta unit is nice, but if you don't need them, then at the end of the day, you're not maximizing what you could be getting from your pulls at the end of the day, right? For example, if you have the Herda and Aglaya, you honestly, genuinely do not need Casterus at all. Even if you have the former two DPSs I mentioned at E0, S0, if you have a good team comp for those two units, or at the very least like a decent team comp, you are not going to need Casterus as well. Because then you're going to have to bench either the Herda or Aglaya, and between the two, you're probably going to be benching Aglaya. So, you get what I mean, right? So, just be careful with what units you actually pull for, which units you invest into, which team comps you invest into. At the end of the day, you want as many versatile units as possible. You want characters with that flexibility factor where you can put them in different kinds of team comps and get some cool funky stuff going, because at the end of the day, right, like for example, if you pull for Fugue for a Firefly team comp and then you bench Firefly, there goes your Fugue as well, right? So that's about it for this video. If you want Hyacine, go get Hyacine. If you want Cipher, go get Cipher. But me personally, I'm going to be skipping these two units, and if I had to choose between Hyacine versus Cipher, I would easily go with Hyacine. If I personally, on my account, got Hyacine, I would not replace her probably forever, right? Unless another sustain came out in the future that just looked better, right? But that's about it for this video. There's not much else to say. I'll see y'all. Goodbye.